Hello friends, I am Dr. Ashish Agrawat. Welcome to my channel Live Biochemistry. Today I am going to discuss about the water and electrolyte balance. In this part, I will be taking two videos. In this video, I will be taking about the basic of the water electrolyte balance. So we will see about the renin-angiotensin mechanism, ADH mechanism, intracellular, extracellular, what is the distribution of water and what are the major cation, anion, intracellular and extracellular. And this video will be very helpful to you to understand the basics. And in the next video, I will be talking about the sodium, potassium and chloride. So first see this video and then see the sodium, potassium, chloride. So I am sharing the screen with you now. So water and electrolyte balance. So why this is important? Okay, because 50 to 60% of the human body is made up of the water, right? Water will provide the medium for transporting nutrients to the cell and waste from the cell and transporting the substance like hormones, enzymes, blood platelets, red and white blood cells, all are transported with the help of water. All right. This water will facilitate cellular metabolism and proper cellular chemical functioning. Water will act as a solvent for the electrolytes and non-electrolytes, helps maintaining the normal body temperature, facilitates the digestion and promotes the elimination. So water, it will provide the nutrients to the cell, it will remove the waste are removed, it acts as a solvent for the electrolytes and non-electrolytes. Okay, it helps to maintain the body temperature and facilitate in the digestion, right? And it also acts as a lubricant. Now, total body water for the 70 kg person weight, it is around 60% of the body weight is made up of water. So if we calculate the 60%, it will be the 42 liters. Okay. Out of this 42 liter, extracellular is 20% and 40% is intracellular. So within the cell, around 40%. So it is out of 42 ml, 28 ml is water is present within the cell, while 14 liter is extracellular. Now extracellular can be either interstitial, that is called as extravascular, or intravascular. So this extravascular means interstitial. So it is around 16%. That is around 10.5 or 10 liter. While intravascular is around 3.5 liter. That is 4 liter. Right. So this is how. So if we calculate out of 14%, if we take the 4%, or it is around 1/4 portion. Right. It is 3.5 liter. So this is how the water is distributed. So intracellular, as you know, total is 28 liter. Okay, out of 42 liter, okay, 2/3 is intracellular. Now 1/3, that is 14 liter, is extracellular. Extracellular can be divided into the intravascular and interstitial. Okay, this is the interstitial portion. In the intravascular, it is around 4 liter. And in the interstitial, it is around 10 liter. This is how water is distributed in our body. Okay, so you can see here, fluid comprise around 50% of the body weight. Intracellular 2/3, so out of 42, okay, liter, 28 liter is present inside this cell. This is nucleus, mitochondria. So within the cell, this is water. Okay, and 14 liter is extracellular, which is divided into the interstitial and intravascular. Intravascular is also called as the plasma portion, interstitial or extravascular. Right. So fluid component, one is intracellular, right, ICF, and extracellular. Extracellular is divided into the interstitial, which is also called as the extravascular, or plasma, which is the intravascular. Okay, so I hope it is clear. Now, what is the intake and output of the water? So from the food, we get around 1250 ml. Drinking water, we take around 1200. And during the oxidation of the food, that is called as the metabolic water, we get around 300. So total intake is around 2750 ml. And output out of this in urine, 1500 ml is excreted through urine, 500 through skin, 700 through lungs, and this is 200. So this is a balance between the intake and output of the water, right? So this is a proper balance is there. Whenever there is a disturbance, then problem will start occurring. There is a movement of fluids: osmosis, diffusion, filtration, and active transport. This is by 4 mechanisms. There is a movement of fluids occur in the body. What is diffusion? Movement of water from high concentration to low concentration via the semi-permeable membrane. This is clear, right? So movement of either water or dissolved substance from higher concentration to lower concentration. That is okay. That is diffusion. Now coming to the osmosis. This is very, very important point. Remember this. So suppose here these are the dissolved substance, right? And here there is a lower concentration, and here is a higher concentration of dissolved substance. You can see there are more dissolved substance here, and here there are lower. So movement of water from lower concentration to the higher concentration, that is called as a osmosis. Okay. So from lower concentration to the higher concentration. Suppose this dissolved substance may be sodium, okay, maybe protein, right? So when these substances are more, they will increase the tonicity. So movement of water from lower concentration to the higher concentration, right? That is called as the osmosis. So if you see, this is a beaker, there is a semi-permeable membrane, this is a semi-permeable membrane. When we add the dissolved substance, so when substance are more, it will draw the water. Okay, here there are low substance, okay, dissolved substance are less. Here these are now more. They will take up the water. Okay, so movement of water occurs through semi-permeable membrane, and you can see here there is more water as compared to this. So that is called as the osmosis. Okay, movement of fluid through the semi-permeable membrane, right? Now, what is filtration here? Colloid osmotic pressure is constant, like around 25 millimeter mercury. At arterial side, there is a pressure is around 35, right? At the venous end, it is around 15 millimercury. So at the arterial end, what will happen? Water, okay. So whatever is more, so arterial side, there is an escape of fluid because the pressure is more, right? So 10 millimercury of pressure, water is released at the arterial end. Now what will happen? At the venous end, it is 25, and pressure, the colloid osmotic pressure is same, but hydrostatic pressure is less, 15. So wherever the pressure is more, the water will draw. So at the venous end, water will come out. So that is how the fluid is maintained. Okay. But what will happen? Suppose this colloid osmotic pressure is maintained by the albumin. When albumin level is low due to any cause, cirrhosis of liver or nephrotic syndrome, suppose out of 25, suppose it has come to the 5 only. Okay, because less albumin. So what will come? Water will escape at the arterial end by the pressure of 30 millimercury, but at the venous end, water will not come again in the compartment. So the fluid extravasate in the extracellular fluid. Fluid accumulate at the extracellular space. That is lead to the edema. Okay, so that is a very important concept. Now, sodium from lower concentration to higher concentration will move with the help of ATP, while potassium will from low to higher, it will move. Okay, so that is we have already seen in the active transport. So this is the basic thing you have to remember. So suppose this is a compartment. Okay, Here there are more dissolved substance. Here there are less dissolved substance, like 3 only. Okay. So what this substance will cause? It will take the water. Okay. So diffusion of water fluid from lower concentration of dissolved substance to the higher. So suppose it has a, this is the hypertonic. Okay, this dissolved substance is goes for the tonicity. So whenever the fluid is hypertonic, it will draw the water towards its side. See, that is very important when we want to give the pints IV line. So this concept is very important. Okay, remember this. Now, what is osmolarity? It is moles per liter, and osmolality is moles per kg. Right? The osmolarity of the blood, osmolality, is 285 to 296 mole per kg. That is the normal. Now, what are the mechanisms that will regulate the body fluids? So, fluid intake like thirst, or fluid output like urine, insensible loss, or feces where water is lost. Okay, and maintaining homeostasis, kidney play important part. ADH also play important part. Renin, angiotensin, aldosterone very important part, and atrial natriuretic system. This all will maintain the water and electrolyte balance. Now, what will happen when there is a drop in the blood pressure? Then kidney will release one substance called renin. This renin will convert angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. This angiotensinogen is protein secreted from the liver. So liver will secrete angiotensinogen. From kidney, renin is secreted that will convert angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Now this angiotensin 1 is converted to angiotensin 2 by the angiotensin converting enzyme ACE that is secreted from the lung. So once angiotensin 2 is formed, what angiotensin 2 will do? It has a 3 role. In the brain, from the hypothalamus, it will stimulate the thirst center so that more and more water will be taken, and it will stimulate release of ADH, antidiuretic hormone. Okay, so antidiuresis means water will be excreted in the tubules and the urine, right? It will prevent the diuresis, so water will be taken up, reabsorbed, right? So once water are reabsorbed, it will increase the ECF volume, and as ECF volume is increased, it will elevate the BP. Then in the heart, there will be vasoconstriction, and that will elevate the BP. And in the adrenal cortex, it will stimulate the release of aldosterone. As we know, aldosterone will increase the reabsorption of sodium and promote the excretion of potassium. So as aldosterone is increased, there is a salt, and against along with the sodium, water will be reabsorbed, and ultimately blood pressure is elevated. So this is a very, very important mechanism. So also when there is the osmolarity is increased, so osmoreceptor in the hypothalamus, right, they will secrete the antidiuretic hormones that will act on the kidney tubules and the distal tubules, and it will increase the reabsorption of water. And increase the water reabsorption, it will decrease the osmolarity, right? This is very important. Also, whenever there is a decrease in BP, volume receptor, atrial great veins, they will stimulate the hypothalamus and release of ADH. Also, the stress, heat, nicotine, all ultimately they will increase the blood volume. Also, when there is sodium is lost or blood volume is lost, the juxtaglomerular cell will release the renin. This renin will convert angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 will be converted to angiotensin 2. Okay, and it will, via the vasoconstriction of arterial smooth vessel, it will increase the sodium reabsorption, or it will act on the adrenal cortex to release aldosterone. It will act on the kidney tubules and increase the sodium reabsorption. So this is how our water and electrolyte balance is maintained. Again, whenever fall in BP, renin release from kidney. Okay, and angiotensin, it will act on the angiotensinogen. This angiotensinogen is released from the liver. Okay, and angiotensinogen will be converted to angiotensin 1 with the help of renin. And angiotensin 1 is converted to angiotensin 2 by the angiotensin converting enzyme released from the lung. Okay, and that will cause the vasoconstriction and blood pressure is increased. And aldosterone, what it will do? It will do the sodium retention and blood pressure is increased. So this is how important regulation is taking place. Now, what is atrial natriuretic peptides? They are secreted in response to the stimulation of atrial stretch receptor, and they inhibit the renin and aldosterone secretion, okay, and eliminate the sodium, right? So whenever the blood volume is increased, then this will act. Disturbance in fluid and electrolyte balance. So abnormality in fluid and electrolyte balance can be expressed in terms of tonicity. When the osmolality is increased, it is called as a hypertonic, or when osmolality is decreased, that is called as a hypotonic. So whenever sodium, this protein, they are more, that will cause an increased osmolality. This dissolved substance, they will increase the tonicity, and when this sodium is lost, then it will cause the hypotonic. Okay. So now, suppose this is the RBC, and when they are placed in the isotonic medium like 0.9% sodium chloride, then everything is okay. But when we give the hypertonic, that means, suppose example is 0.9, okay, dextrose, no, 5% dextrose plus 0.9 of normal saline. That means because of the dextrose, glucose, and sodium, the fluid is hypertonic. So what this hypertonic fluid will do, as it has more tonicity, it has more sodium, more glucose, so they will take up the H2O. So cell will shrink, right? This is very important features. Okay, so when we give the hypertonic fluid, then the cell will shrink. Okay, it will take up the water. This is very important. So we have to give in the patient of edema. Okay, so suppose patient has a cerebral edema. So we give this hypertonic fluid and it will take up the water. So this is very important. So when we normal vomiting, normal diarrhea, we can give isotonic fluid like 0.9% NaCl. But in case of the, okay, in case of cerebral edema or whenever edema, we have to give the hypertonic fluid. That is very important. That's why we have to give. Okay, that's why we need to know the concept of this tonicity. And when we give the hypotonic fluid, suppose instead of 0.9 NaCl, if we give 0.45 NaCl, then what will happen? Because the tonicity is less, so they will take up, okay, so inside the cell, their concentration is more, okay, and here this tonicity is less. So what will happen? Fluid will go from the lower concentration to the higher concentration. Okay, so water will be go and cell becomes swollen. Okay, that's why we have to take care very much when we are giving hypotonic or hypertonic fluids. Okay, cell can become swollen when we give 0.45 NaCl. Right. So whenever there is a severe dehydration, then the cell, when the cell has shrunken, in that case we can give the hypotonic fluid. Remember this. Okay, so isotonic fluid, what it will do? So amount of water transported into the cell is equal to amount of water transported out of the cell. So it is same. So in case normal vomiting diarrhea, to restore, we can give the normal, right? But what will happen when we put into the hypotonic solution? The cell becomes swollen, okay, and ultimately it bursts and hemolysis can occur. But in case of severe case, when cell has sunken, we can give. Okay. And what will happen in hypertonic fluid? Cell becomes shrink. Okay, you can see the size. So in case of edema, when there is too much water inside the cell, in that case we can give the hypertonic fluid. Right. So you can see in case of when we give the hypertonic fluid, the cell will become shrunk because water will come out, because here there is a around it there is a hypertonicity. So from lower concentration to the higher concentration, cell will move. Right. Here the water exchange is same, and when we give the hypotonic fluid, so around there is less tonicity. Okay, so here tonicity is more, so water will go inside and cell becomes swollen. Right. So this is 0.45% NS. This is normal 0.9. This is isotonic. This is hypotonic, and dextrose plus 0.9 sodium chloride. That is a hypertonic fluid. Okay, so we can, in case of edema, when there is a too much of water inside the cell, we can give this hypertonic fluid. Okay, so why should we care? Because whenever there is an increased sodium concentration in extracellular fluid, right, that is okay. So in that case, what will happen? Extracellular fluid is more, so water will shift from intracellular to extracellular. So sodium will go from intracellular to extracellular fluid. So as such, there will be hypernatremia and water will move. So cell becomes shrunken. Okay. And here, in that case, we can give the 0.45 hypotonic solution. That will what? Because here there is the tonicity is less, so water will go back to the intracellular space. So intracellular water volume is maintained. This is very important. Right. Now there may be expansion of extracellular fluid, which can be isotonic, hypotonic, and hypertonic. Isotonic means expansion of extracellular fluid, means there will be retention of sodium and water in the extracellular space, right? So, and osmolality will be same. But if there is a only water excess, okay, so water excess is more, that means sodium is less, that means it is a hypotonic. Okay, so whenever water excess, so expansion of ECF. Whenever there is a sodium loss only, whenever there is sodium excess, it will cause the hypertonic expansion. Okay, and because of the sodium is increased, the osmolality will be increased. Now, what is contraction of ECF? Okay, so loss of sodium and water. So both are lost, it is isotonic. But if only sodium is lost, then this contraction is hypotonic and osmolarity is decreased. And when it is relative loss of only water, then sodium will be there, so it will cause the hypertonicity. I hope it is clear. Now, what is the major cation in intracellular fluid? So within the cell, this nucleus, this is the cytoplasm, most abundant cation is potassium, right? And most abundant anion inside the cell is HPO4 minus, right? Now, major cation in extracellular fluid is sodium, and major anion in extracellular fluid is, chloride, right? This is a basic thing that you should know. Okay, regarding the sodium, I will discuss sodium, potassium, and chloride in my next lecture. I hope you like this video and you understand the basic concept of water and electrolyte balance. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, please hit the like button, share my video, subscribe to my channel, and press the bell icon so that you can get notification for my future video also. Thanks for watching. Bye.